It's really tricky when we look at things coming out of communist China because what we can learn from them is already curated. Basically a propaganda for us to see. But when you actually look at China's internal documents or internal speeches to their own people, you see a very different picture. For example, if we go to Mao Zedong in 1942, he held a secret speech for his own comrades. And he tells them there is, in fact, no such thing as art for art's sake. Instead, literature and art are subordinate to politics. And then he goes on to say, our aim is to ensure that revolutionary literature and art follow the correct path of development and provide better help to other revolutionary work in facilitating the overthrow of our national enemy. Now, if we look at the next leader, Deng Xiaoping, he also said something similar. He said literary and artistic workers should cooperate with each other to wage a long-term and effective struggle in the ideological field against all kinds of ideological habits that are harmful to the four modernizations. So to sum up, the Chinese Communist Party really sees art as a tool to further the state or party's goals, and to do that, it needs to be an effective tool. Next, we have Hu Jintao. So he really hammered the point home that art needs to enhance the state's cultural soft power. So now he brings in this term soft power. What that means is he says it needs to absorb and borrow all outstanding cultural achievements from other countries, so say America, but to use that for their own benefit. So this is not them telling the world what they are, but other countries telling each other what China is, in the way that the CCP wants it to be shown. Now, if we look at the current CCP leader Xi Jinping, he takes it a step further, even to the point where it's in an internal PLA textbook or China's military. It declares that the battle for mind control happens on a smokeless battlefield and happens inside the domain of ideology. So it goes on to say, whoever controls this battlefield can win hearts. And then the document goes on to quote Xi Jinping in one of his secret speeches. And in that secret speech, he said, when it comes to combat in the ideology domain, we don't have any room for compromise or retreat. We must achieve total victory. If you really look at all these different leaders and in the way they look at art, it really is a tool to serve the state and their goals, which in the end is to achieve total hegemony.
In the United States and in the free world, we've come to believe, with World War I and World War II and all the movies and Vietnam and Korea and Iraq and Afghanistan, that you're either in war or you're not in war. And it involves uniforms, guns, planes, ships, and so on. That's the way we think in the United States, and we have to think very differently.
There's something fantastic about these sheets of fire.
People should want informed consent when it comes to a pharmaceutical pill that they put in to treat their body. They should have the same value attached to intellectual pills that they put into their brain.
The Chinese Communist Party follow no rules. So their view is achieving military methods or military objectives through non-military means. Okay, that means you. That means American people in your living rooms, in your schools, in your movie theaters, in your social media. That's what that means.
Cultural clashes and power struggles between rival world powers, the US and China.
So now it's everywhere. It's insidious. It is like a cancer, and it is going to be very difficult to defeat because it's a brain disease.
What we have to realize is the Chinese Communist Party is after control, and they need to script a narrative to be something different than they are. They don't want anybody to know what they have really done or what their goal is. And that soft propaganda angle is where they feel they can infiltrate and make bigger gains, if you will. And we all know that their goal is global domination, by the time you get to the midpoint of this century, they intend for the 21st century to be the China century.
President Xi Jinping is now surrounded by loyalists who, like him, believe that China's path to becoming a major power will have to come at the expense of American power and influence.
There was a moment in the kitchen, and I was on the phone with Marvel, talking to them about something that we wanted to do in the film that would placate the Chinese government. When I got off the phone, my wife said, "It's crazy that you're just trying to please the Chinese government in that kind of a way." And I said, well, yeah, but it's important to the United States because if we do it, then we'll get access to that market, it'll create GDP growth and jobs and spreads aspirational quality of democracy. And she's like, I know, but it just feels like you're continuing to feed the beast. That was the moment where I thought to myself, oh my God, like, I was the NBA too. All these people that over the years have said, don't you feel like you're being a shill for China? Don't you feel like you're being a little too heavy-handed on things or trying to kowtow too much to the Chinese government? And I would say, no, you don't understand. This is spreading aspirational quality of democracy in the country. This is about GDP growth and jobs here in the United States. Like, this is all good. You don't understand. You're saying that I'm doing something wrong, but I'm actually doing something right. You are wrong, I'm right. That was the moment where I said, oh my God, maybe I was in the wrong.
It's a big mistake to give an authoritarian regime coercive power over your economy.
The one big ally that Beijing has and is very powerful is the business lobby.
China continue to change and evolve, and we are grateful at Apple.
And the business lobby doesn't think about necessarily national security issues or principles, values. They just think about profit, loss, revenue, how to scale, what are the markets. And in a way, that is supposed to be capitalism. But capitalism doesn't exist without the foundation of the countries that allow it to flourish, right? So if you look at the business lobby, they're playing with fire. If they continue to push the envelope of unfettered access to China, do whatever it takes to get that, we're gonna lose what provides them the platform to even have that type of capitalism.
From the perspective of the Founding Fathers, this First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech is essential. There's no real Hollywood in China. Everything's controlled. It's ridiculous for Hollywood not to stand up to an enemy of the democracy within which it has grown up and flourishes. Without those principles, there's no Hollywood.
We're only now seeing a little bit of pushback towards that. I mean, we saw with the latest Doctor Strange movie, we saw the epochTimes newsstand was put in a couple of the different action scenes. We saw with Sony standing up to the Chinese authorities who wanted to get the complete third act of Spider-Man changed so that there was no visual presence of the Statue of Liberty, which was ridiculous. Studio Sony said no. In general, we fed the dragon for too long, and I thought that would make a great sort of title for the book. Even in my social media, I refer to myself as like feeding the dragon or the dragon feeder, mainly because I feel like I'm a bit on, not a crusade, but I want to be part of the process of trying to fix this. And until it's fixed, I'm going to blame myself as being part of the feeding the dragon problem, so I'll continue calling myself the dragon feeder.
It's a very powerful story that we had in our last movie, Finding Courage. it's really been very successful in film festivals. And so the fact that some film festivals censored that, we had a number of film festival directors call and say, we are so scared to show your movie. Some of them did it anyway, others didn't. There was one festival that we're aware of that was receiving funding from China, advertising dollars. And we're talking tens of thousands every year. They decided, when they take that money, there's criteria. You don't show things that would offend your advertiser, being China, the CCP. But that year they decided, when our movie came out, they didn't take the money, and we won a prize. We won a top prize at that festival. It hit the audience that we were trying to reach. It made an impact to the point where it instigated the formation of an organization called End Transplant Abuse in China. That organization went on to gather support from professionals all across the world.
An independent international tribunal concludes that China is killing prisoners in order to harvest their organs.
The Chinese government says it's reformed the practice.
But the China tribunal suggests it is still happening.
Targeting prisoners because of their religious beliefs and then making a profit by trafficking these victims' organs.
And so knowing that the work that I did contributed to that was very rewarding, more rewarding than any certificates or trophies or industry recognition, because I knew that that is something I could really be proud of, and that in the future my kids, my grandkids could say, you knew what happened at that time when that horrific persecution was happening. What did you do about it? Well, I did something.
We don't have a grievance with the Chinese people or the culture that I romantically had this yearning to engage.
So it sounds in this case, right, it's like the Chinese people themselves are the biggest victims of the Chinese regime. Is that fair to say?
Oh, they're the first victim, and they're the largest victim. And it's really too sorrowful to think about what the Chinese people have suffered for generations now. And those stories need to be told. Think of the famine. Think of the Cultural Revolution. Think of what it was like to be brought out on a stage before everyone you went to school with, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your friends, and to be berated. Think what it would be like to be pregnant and to be forced to have an abortion. Think of how impotent you would feel as a husband or as a father or as a brother to watch this happen to your wife, your sister, your mother. These are sorrowful stories. I used to have an internship program in Hollywood for Chinese students. And I remember one day, one of my employees got sick and I had to take the big white van down to the airport to pick up the students from China as they landed. They had this long flight. I brought them to their living quarters where they were going to live. And the first thing one of the young women asked is if she could go to a bookstore. And I took her to the Barnes & Noble on the 3rd Street Promenade there in Santa Monica. And we lost her. We couldn't find her. We went to eat. It'd been hours, and where is she? And I went walking around the bookstore, and I saw her sitting with a book on her lap. She had piles of books next to her, tears in her eyes, and she looked up at me. She was in the Asia Pacific section. She looked up and she said, "The world knows more about us than we know about ourselves." And that was quite sorrowful. But the world needs to know these stories, not from books, but from art, from film. And the world needs to know what this wicked ideology of evil has inflicted on the people of China for generations.
Вот Борис Николаевич мне сейчас, когда уже мы встретились.
Here's the good news, that ideologies of evil, regimes based on ideologies of evil, collapse. Because evil is a deprivation and it cannot sustain itself. So you saw Nazi Germany's 1,000-year Reich lasted not even 13 years. The Soviet Union did last 70 years. I believe the CCP is coming to an end. I'm really looking forward to a free China. I'm really looking for a China where they can tell their stories. I'm looking for a Tibet that can breathe free. I'm looking for the Uyghurs who can breathe free. And it's coming, and then the stories will come.
We should be using entrepreneurship, satire, film, entertainment, and programming to sow doubt, but also push truth into the China space in ways that its leaders won't be able to ignore, might upset and frustrate them, but they deserve that. And the people of China deserve it.
I'm thankful, thank God I'm still working in an industry that I still love. I love what I do, and I'm gonna keep making movies and make movies that I wanna make that have a positive influence on people, not a negative.
I think creativity and free expression is in our DNA. It's in the Constitution. It's what we care so deeply about. And I think that Hollywood should be the beacon of that. It should be the light that we all look to. But I would love Hollywood to embrace America again.
There's a lot of difficulty in when you want to tell stories about China that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't like. And so that ties into the work we do at our media company, especially our show China in Focus, because we focus on communist China and exposing all of that. And so it's quite hard because it's hard to get sponsors. Many companies don't want to risk their China ties. Maybe they're supportive of what we do, but they don't want to risk any business ties they might have. Protests, if that's enough to take down. And so that's one hard aspect. Can't pay your own salaries. But another big part is a lot of our reporters actually still have family in China. And so because of that, they don't go on camera because they don't want to endanger any family members they have back home. And so it's hard on them as well, to progress that way. But despite all the difficulties in, say, reporting on what happens in China, there are moments that are really rewarding. So one was in the very beginning of our show, just when the pandemic started, we had a viewer who emailed us and was like, I was in Wuhan visiting family. This was around the Lunar New Year. And they saw our coverage. And because of that, they got an earlier flight. And right after that, everything was shut down. And they're like, thank you for saving our life. Because if it wasn't for your coverage, we would have still been in Wuhan and maybe would have been still under lockdowns 3 years later. And stories like that just really was both encouraging and inspiring for us. And it's why we continue to do what we do, despite, say, all the difficulties. As you just saw, movies drive trends in society, from our politics to our culture. Please help us share this film and get the truth out there. Either scan this QR code or visit the website on screen right now to join in the effort and spread the word. We've also set up a way to pay it forward so others can learn about what's really happening for free. Every American needs to hear this story. Help us make it happen.